Dove emoji, the forbidden fruit and the cross, a reflection on gender, consequence, and redemption in the modern age. Ladies and gentlemen, throughout history, humanity has wrestled with the grand narratives of suffering, sacrifice, and salvation. At the heart of many of our deepest moral and metaphysical questions lies a paradox. Why do we suffer, and what purpose, if any, does that suffering serve? The Book of Genesis offers one of the oldest and most symbolically charged answers. When Eve, the first woman, partakes of the forbidden fruit, she does not merely break a divine rule, she sets in motion a chain of human consciousness and consequence. The pain in childbirth, often interpreted as a curse, may not be a punishment at all, but rather a natural, embodied result of her new relationship with knowledge, man, and mortality. God's words to Eve, "In pain you shall bring forth children," can be read less as retribution and more as prophecy. A woman who submits herself to the carnal knowledge of man will experience the full crucifixion of body, mind, and identity through pregnancy and childbirth. This crucifixion is not symbolic, it is visceral, physical, and life-altering. The woman becomes a vessel of suffering and transformation, as her body is torn open to give life. Yet, while women historically bore this agony through motherhood, men bore a different kind of crucifixion, the slow death of labor. By the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread, God tells Adam. His punishment is toil. He is nailed to a cross made of duty, of providing, of braving war, hunger, hardship, and humiliation, not to birth new life from his body, but to sustain the life given through her body. His sacrifice is economic, societal, and physical. Now, consider the crucifixion of Christ. He takes upon himself the sins of the world, not just as a moral act, but as an embodiment of ultimate male suffering. Torture, humiliation, abandonment, and death, not for personal gain, but for the redemption of others. It is a divine echo of the masculine burden. Christ is the ideal male sacrificial archetype. But something changed in the 20th century. In the 1960s, with the advent of contraception, women found a way to bypass their crucifixion. For the first time in history, the forbidden fruit, the act of sexual knowing, could be indulged without the consequence of birth. The separation of sex and suffering was achieved chemically. This was revolutionary, and like all revolutions, it came at a cost. Without the crucifixion of childbirth, the moral weight of sex was lifted, or so it seemed. Women were free, but also untethered. With no natural consequence to filter choice, the instincts and desires that once served survival began to turn inward. Many sought men not for security, character, or sacrificial integrity, but for beauty, vitality, and rebellion. Women became drawn to icons of freedom, not of responsibility. Look at the Vietnam War era. Young men were drafted against their will, thrust into suffering, death, and trauma. These men, like Christ, bore a cross they didn't choose. Yet, when they returned home, they were spit on, rejected, and scorned, not unlike the way the Jews and Romans mocked the bleeding Son of God. These men, who gave themselves for the country, were met not with love but contempt. At the same time, a new kind of man flourished, the draft-dodging hippie, the peace-preaching rebel, often visually modeled after the European image of Christ, long hair, beard, sandals. These men avoided crucifixion, but resembled salvation. Women, freed from biological consequence, chose freedom over sacrifice, image over substance. This inversion of values wasn't just a social shift, it was a spiritual upheaval. When the symbols of sacrifice are scorned, and those who mimic holiness but avoid its cost are glorified, we are no longer aligned with the deeper truths of life. We are, instead, under a new kind of curse, emptiness disguised as freedom. And now, decades later, we see the fruit of that inversion. Many modern women, educated, free, unburdened by children, report feeling unfulfilled, anxious, or spiritually lost. Some look back with bitterness, not understanding why the world no longer offers meaning. This is their crucifixion, not of the body, but of the soul. Having bypassed the crucifixion of motherhood and domestic sacrifice, they now face a psychological and existential pain that has no clear redemption arc. Meanwhile, men, now told their sacrifices are oppressive, their labors unnecessary, and their roles obsolete, withdraw. Many disengage from relationships, career ambition, or society itself. They opt out, not from laziness, but from disillusionment. If their crucifixion is no longer honored, then why climb the hill at all? This is not merely a crisis of gender, it is a crisis of meaning. We are a culture that has separated pleasure from pain, responsibility from identity, and sex from sacrifice. But just as Christ's crucifixion was necessary for resurrection, so too is the enduring wisdom of consequence vital to any renewal. If women are to be honored for their inherent worth, then the path of creation must be reclaimed, not necessarily through childbirth alone, but through self-sacrificial purpose. And if men are to reclaim their value, it will not be through brute force or charm, but by embodying truth, provision, and protection, even when it is thankless. The old myths had wisdom encoded into them. Dragons guard treasure. That treasure is not just gold, but the future itself, love, children, peace, legacy. To slay the dragon, one must suffer. To bear life, one must endure pain. But once we separate the trial from the reward, we enter a world of false light, a garden where the fruit is easy to reach, but poisoned by the absence of cost. So today, as we stand at the crossroads of automation, moral confusion, and social fragmentation, we would do well to remember, it is not suffering that damns us. It is suffering without meaning, crucifixion without resurrection. Let us return to that deeper truth, not as victims of ancient rules, but as seekers of a future where truth, sacrifice, and love are once again bound together. Thank you.